War Sovereign Soaring the Heavens, Chapter 789. But truthfully speaking, her appearance is still not bad. A woman with such an appearance is rarely seen in the world, and it's the first time in my life that I've seen such a beauty. The eyes of a young genius from the Darming dynasties narrowed as he looked at Feng Tianwu with a covetous gaze. Her appearance is drop-dead gorgeous, and she possesses a cultivation at the void initiation stage. A woman like this is rarely seen, and it would surely be fortune the person that obtained her had accumulated from his past lifetime. Another person spoke out. If I can ride a woman like this under my legs, then it would surely be an extremely wonderful thing. Another young genius from Darming dynasty looked at Feng Tianwu and stuck out his tongue to lick his dry lips, and he spoke with a lustful expression. You're courting death. At the instant that Feng Tianwu's face went livid, Duan Lingtian's expression went grim as he shouted out furiously before flashing out to sweep towards the young genius from Darming dynasty that spoke rudely. But even though Duan Lingtian's speed was swift, someone was even faster. Swish! A brief sword howl resounded out abruptly. Before everyone couldn't react, a bloody hold had already appeared on the neck of the young genius from the Darming dynasty. Blood sprayed out ceaselessly, and the Darming dynasty's young geniuses that spoke rudely earlier still maintained his original actions, yet his entire body was completely devoid of signs of life. Along with this Darming dynasty's young genius's corpse crashing on the ground, a wave of ear-piercing sounds of air exploding resounded out. In the next moment, a terrifying gale that swept out from a palm blasted the corpse into powder that dispersed into the heavens and the earth. Whoosh! At the same time, a tall red-colored figure appeared and stood in the sky. It was precisely Feng Wudao. Duan Lingtian stopped moving when he saw Feng Wudao had killed the person that disrespected Feng Tianwu, and his expression eased up slightly, yet his eyes still contained frightful coldness. His eyes that were filled with coldness flashed past the 8 remaining young geniuses of the Darming dynasty one by one. Feng Wudao, you actually dare kill a member of my Darming dynasty. The Darming dynasty's Zhao clan's elder Qian went grim in expression as he stared at Feng Wudao, yet he didn't dare make any movements. Because he knew that he was far from being a match to Feng Wudao. 2 days ago, when the Skywolf Fort's vice-fort master, Feng Wei, and the Dongguo clan's patriarch, Dongguo Lei, had come looking for trouble with Duan Lingtian, Feng Wudao had once revealed his cultivation. At that time, he was present. He deserved death. Feng Wudao glanced indifferently at Elder Qian. The instant he spoke disrespectfully to my daughter, his life didn't belong to himself any longer. You. Elder Qian was instantly exasperated when he heard this, yet he was unable to say anything, because everyone had heard that it was their Darming dynasty that was in the wrong. But never had he imagined that Feng Wudao would make a move and kill a young genius of their Darming dynasty just because of something the young genius had said. The Darkhan dynasty's Feng Wudao was really as overbearing as the rumors said. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as his gaze descended onto all the young geniuses of the Darming dynasty, and at the first possible moment, he noticed that the Darming dynasty's crown prince, Liu Yong, had suddenly looked towards Feng Wei. Feng Wei was currently the master of Liu Yong. It wasn't difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess that Liu Yong was surely saying something to Feng Wei via voice transmission now, and the biggest possibility was that he was asking Feng Wei to stand out for the Darming dynasty. The facts proved that Duan Lingtian had guessed correctly. After Feng Wudao returned to their group, Feng Wei took a step forward, and his cold gaze descended onto Feng Wudao as he said in a low voice, "Killing a guest of our Skywolf Fort in our Skywolf Fort. A void transformation stage martial artist from just a tiny dynasty actually dares be so brazen? You're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Wei took a step forward as the origin energy on his body skyrocketed, and it seemed to have transformed into a ball of raging flames that enveloped him within it, causing him to seem overbearing. Besides that, his gaze locked onto Feng Wudao at the first possible moment. Right when he intended to make a move. Swoosh! A figure instantly vanished on the spot, and when it appeared once more, it was already before Feng Wudao and had firmly protected Feng Wudao behind it. This person's appearance caused Feng Wei's expression to go grim, and he shouted out furiously at the same time. Sword 13, what's the meaning of this? The person that had appeared before Feng Wudao was exactly Sword 13. Sword 13 had a calm expression when facing Feng Wei's question. Feng Wei, you're intending to make a move against an elder of my House of Swords right before my eyes. Could it be that I can't interfere? Everyone present had clearly heard and seen what happened earlier, and you know who was right and who was wrong in your heart. If you really want to make a move against an elder of my House of Swords because of this, then even if you have the Skywolf fort behind you, my House of Swords will similarly not stop until one of us dies. Not stop until one of us dies. As Sword 13 finished speaking, his tone was filled with coldness, indifference, and killing intent, and it caused Feng Wei's expression to be exceedingly livid. The House of Swords won't stop until either one of us dies? Not to mention anything else, just these words of Sword 13 had caused him to feel fear from the bottom of his heart. In this border area of the foreign lands, everyone knew that House of Swords in the Blade sect was filled with a group of sword cultivators that were complete madmen. Supposedly, 100 years ago, there was a power of the foreign lands that wasn't inferior to Skywolf Fort, yet because it offended the master of the House of Swords at that time, it was slaughtered by the group of madmen sword cultivators to the point of completely going into decline. Presently, that power had already fallen to become a power that wasn't rated in the foreign lands. Sword 13 was already the internally decided next master of the House of Swords in the Blade sect, and his words were completely capable of representing the House of Swords. Once the entire House of Swords went against him, Feng Wei, then even the Skywolf fort might not be able to protect him. So when faced with Sword 13's threats, Feng Wei really didn't dare continue doing anything to Feng Wudao. Alright. This matter stops here. Ning Ken spoke out to break the deathly silent atmosphere at the scene, and at the same time, he gave Feng Wei a way out. Feng Wei took a deep breath and glanced coldly at Sword 13 and Feng Wudao before retreating back to the place he stood earlier. At the same time, all the people that were discussing Feng Tianwu without restraint had shut their mouths successively, and they looked at Feng Tianwu as if she was a dreadful monster. Vice Fort Master, there's no problem with all of them. In next to no time, the 10 elders of Skywolf Fort put away the age-measuring pearls before returning to stand behind Feng Wei and Ning Ken, and then they reported respectfully. Ning Ken nodded, and then he looked at all the representatives and young geniuses of the 10 dynasties in the surroundings. Now, I announce that the martial competition of the 10 dynasties officially begins. Instantly, the gazes of all the young geniuses present lit up successively, and their faces were filled with anticipation. They'd traveled a long distance to come here for the sake of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Supposedly, the people that become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties were even able to obtain generous rewards like grade 3 spirit weapons, medicinal pills, concept fragments, and other things bestowed by Skywolf Fort. The first round of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties will be held here. Suddenly, Ning Ken raised his head to look even higher above in the sky of the combat arena as he spoke slowly. For a time, the gazes of everyone converged over, and in the end, they weren't able to see anything. The horizon was filled with the blue sky and white clouds, and they couldn't discern anything was amiss. Only a single person noticed an inkling. What a complicated inscription formation. Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he was slightly surprised. When Ningkan had spoken and raised his head to look even higher in the sky, Duan Lingtian had followed Ningkan's gaze to look up, and then his spiritual force flashed out, allowing him to notice an inkling. It turned out that a complicated inscription formation was concealed there, and it was difficult for even Duan Lingtian's spiritual force to fuse into it. This inscription formation is obviously the work of an expert at the martial monarch stage. With my current spiritual force, I'm utterly unable to peek into it. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed this. How formidable was the spiritual force of a martial monarch stage expert, and an inscription formation formed from inscriptions that were inscribed from this spiritual force was utterly not something his current spiritual force could peek into. Even if he possessed the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor that related to the Dao of inscriptions, he was still helpless. Even though his spiritual force was currently at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage, but it was still too weak before an inscription formation constructed by an expert at the martial monarch stage. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian noticed other formidable spiritual forces stretching out, and it caused him to have no choice but to hurriedly withdraw his own spiritual force. The other 9 dynasties really people with unusual ability concealed within. These spiritual forces are obviously the spiritual forces of inscription masters at the void transformation stage. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and he couldn't help but feel fearful in his heart. Obviously, the representatives of the 10 dynasties were inscription masters, and even if their level in the art of inscription was limited, they were inscription masters after all, and could roughly control their spiritual force. Whoosh! In next to no time, everyone including Duan Lingtian clearly saw that the vice-fort master Ning clan withdraw an ancient copper mirror. The copper mirror seemed ordinary, yet Duan Lingtian was able to guess that it was surely extraordinary. Subsequently, origin energy bloomed out from Ningkan's hand and fused into the copper mirror. Instantly, a material red light shot out explosively from within the copper mirror, and the red light illuminated the sky and actually caused the winds and clouds above to roil before finally converging into a ball of material clouds and mist. An inscription formation. Instantly, many people discerned the profundity of the ball of clouds and mist, and amongst these people included Feng Wu Dao and Feng Tianwu, who'd once seen a similar inscription formation. Exactly. This is an inscription formation. Ningkan put away the copper mirror in his hand that had activated the inscription formation, and then he looked at the young geniuses in the surroundings. This inscription formation is the place all of you will be undergoing the first round of selections. All of you will enter into it and enter an illusory realm that belongs to all of you. Ningkan's words were obviously spoken to the young geniuses of the 10 dynasties that were present. Illusory realm. Ningkan's words caused most people to be slightly puzzled, whereas, Duan Lingtian's gaze couldn't help but light up instead. Illusory realms weren't unfamiliar to him as the soul skill, 1000 illusions, that he possessed was capable of constructing an illusory space at will. Within that illusory space, anyone who had a spiritual force that was inferior to him would be equivalent to a lamb waiting to be slaughtered by him. Within the illusory space he created, he was the absolute ruler. In our Skywolf Fort, that illusory realm has another name. Illusory Purgatory. Ningkan continued. Illusory Purgatory. The people present felt panicked in their hearts for no reason or rhyme when they heard this name. I hope you enjoy the video. Don't forget like, share, subscribe to channels.